All right, everyone, welcome back to the Dead Pundits Society. So today, given that we're in the international break, we're going to be having a look at some of the games that are going to be played this week, notably the World Cup qualifiers for from the UEFA Confederation. I think it's quite an interesting format that they have currently with the 16 teams divided in four paths and one team from each path advancing to the tournament. We obviously already had a similar situation in 2022, but I think there were only three paths instead of four. And it replaced the more traditional two-legged playoff that was happening before then. And yeah, so I think we have some interesting teams that are also on the same side of the bracket. So some big teams will be missing out in the final tournament in the US, Canada, Mexico. So without further ado, I think we can get started. What do you think about the new format, Jake?
I like it. I mean, obviously, there's been an expansion in the 2026 World Cup to 48 teams. So, regardless of how you feel about that or how you may not feel about it, we're going to see a lot of different teams participating, from all continents and including the European ones. I think with the teams that are left, it's quite a big spectrum, so to speak. I think there's some teams that are very big names, strong, that maybe weren't as fortunate in their normal qualifying rounds. And then there's some ones that you'd be quite surprised if they make a World Cup. It would be their first World Cup if they do make it. But yeah, let's get kicked off with Group A first, or Path A.
Yeah. So Path A, I mean, quite some big, quite one big country in there. So obviously Italy in Path A, and they'll be facing Northern Ireland in Bergamo at home, and so currently the Italian media is in a bit of a frenzy, given the failure of the country to qualify for the last two World Cups. Not making a third would be pretty difficult and would make Italy stand alone among the big clubs to not have made three in a row. Obviously, I'm hoping that we'll make it through. But we need to focus and just take it one game at a time. So, first game is going to be at home against Northern Ireland. Obviously, Italy wasn't great in in the group stage qualifier. They came second to Norway, even though I do think we got kind of a bad draw with Norway in our group. I think they'll do quite well at the tournament itself. That being said, obviously I'm gonna back Italy to beat Northern Ireland in that first game. Then the second game, we've got an interesting matchup in Wales against Bosnia. And what's interesting is that the winner of this game will actually play at home against the winner of the other game that we just talked about. So they have home court advantage, so to speak. And Wales against Bosnia, honestly, I haven't really been following either of them recently that much, but I feel like with the home turf advantage in Cardiff, I do back Wales to get the job done there. What do you think?
Yeah, so there's a lot to cover here. Pablo and I have spoken at length before about the Italian national team and its recent struggles for World Cups. I mean, jokes aside, even though on the one hand, I will admit, for the sake of trolling, it would be hilarious if they fail to qualify a third time. I also think it would be a massive stain for the country that I wouldn't like to see. Um, and while, the meme potential is there, I will say, and I've said this from the start, so Pablo can back me on this. I do think Italy's one of those teams that I like to see at a World Cup, even despite France's rivalry with them. Our two countries have always had a bit of a rivalry that's especially been amplified from the international tournaments in the 2000s. Um, I do agree you guys got kind of unlucky with your group in terms of being placed with Norway. Norway went on a historic run. I mean, most goals scored ever by a European club in World Cup qualifiers. And they
Yeah,
were
something like that.
trouncing teams. Um, with that said, I think Italy comfortably win against Northern Ireland. That's my prediction. Uh, if they don't, you guys don't deserve to qualify for the World Cup. That's just plain and simple. I think that that's the type of game you need to show up. You take your senior players, you take your players that are playing in this area for the big teams that are playing in Premier League, that are playing in whichever other league, and you show, just the individual quality that the country has. Wales versus Bosnia is an interesting one. I really don't know as much about Wales in the last couple of years. I think everyone remembers that Wales team from the 2010s, notable tournaments like 2016, of course, everyone was talking about, and just generally speaking, Gareth Bale's impact on the country. Arguably one of the biggest international heroes ever for like a small European country. Yeah, I think Bosnia have a good team. I think this squad is worse than the one they had 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they had their Dzeko, Pjanic, you had Sead Kolasinac, all of these things. I mean, Sead Kolasinac, I think, is still playing actually for the national team, to be fair. But
Yeah, I think
um,
so. Pjanic is definitely retired, and
yeah,
Dzeko
Pjanic is retired. Dzeko,
playing, but he's
yeah,
39, so I don't know how much if he's still even playing with the national team.
yeah. Anyways, we focus a lot on this path just because, I'd say probably the biggest name still in the qualifiers, Italy, is in it. I think Italy will win this. I'm gonna predict not just this match. I think you guys win against Northern Ireland, and then whether you come up against Wales or Bosnia, I think you win. The only thing is playing away in Wales, Cardiff, like you mentioned, or playing away in Bosnia in Zenica. I know the stadium. Yeah, it's hard. It's not an easy game, so we'll see how that shakes out.
No, that's fair. I mean, I agree that it's going to be a tough game either way, but if Italy makes it to the first game, I mean, there's no reason why Italy shouldn't beat all three of
Yeah,
these teams. I mean, Italy's spine or they have a lot of inter players that reached the Champions League final last year, and yeah, they got walloped in the final by PSG, but still, it's a large part of the Italy squad, especially defensively, do come from that team that was beating like some of the best clubs in Europe. So I know that Italian players have had an issue with kind of the pressure associated with playing with a national team, but at the same time, it's your job, right? So I think they need to just
yeah,
get over themselves
they do need to get over
and take us to the
themselves.
tournament.
Yeah,
Like it's a shame that we don't have players of the quality of Francesco Totti, Baggio, Del Piero anymore. But I still think that if we make it to the World Cup, then in the
yeah,
World Cup, there's always the chance that Italy will do well once you're
mm,
there. Obviously, it's not technically as good a team, but there's a solid defense there with Donnarumma and net. And then in the midfield, we have some decent players, even though they're quite out of form. Up front is where we're normally struggling a bit, but this year with the emergence of players like Pio Esposito, I'm feeling a little bit better than in years gone by. So we'll see how it shakes out. We'll find out in about a week or so, but I'm backing Italy to get through path A. So moving on to path B, I think we have some interesting clubs here. So we have the first match is Ukraine versus Sweden. So that's going to be played in Valencia, actually, given that obviously Ukraine isn't able to play international matches at home due to the ongoing war that is taking place. And then the second part of the bracket is Poland against Albania. And so these are quite some interesting teams. I mean, I think from a first glance, Albania is definitely the weaker of the four teams. That being said, Sweden went a kind of a historic, terrible run in their qualifying group. I think they only finished with like 6 points or something. The only reason they qualified is because they had done quite well in the Nations League, so they qualified automatically through that path. But Sweden have been terrible. I think now they're managed by Graham Potter, which is one of the strangest managerial appointments I've seen in a while. But then again, they do have Isak and Gyökeres up front, right? Two player, well, not Isak because he's injured, obviously, but Victor Gyökeres, like who up until a few months ago was considered one of the best strikers in Europe. I feel like it's hard to bet against that kind of firepower. And with Ukraine also playing not on home soil, I actually think that there might be an upset. And I back Sweden to go through there. But then Poland versus Albania, I think Poland's going to have that pretty handily. They're also playing at home. And then the final would be in my bracket, Sweden against Poland. And I actually think Poland has a solid squad, and I can see them going through and making it to the World Cup. They've got players like Lewandowski, obviously older, bit more injury prone, but they even have some good players like Zielinski in midfield. Zaleski, also midfield, ex-Roma player. They have some interesting defenders, some young players. I think they still have Fabianski in net. So honestly, I think Poland have a good squad, and I see them going to the tournament. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. This is a really interesting group. I think it's relatively balanced overall, right? I mean, I agree with you that I think Albania is probably the weakest of these four countries in terms of just the overall squad. Um, the thing that's tough is Sweden on paper have a decent squad. Like you said, they've got some granted, injuries and whatnot, but you mentioned big names as attackers. Um, they have
Yeah,
depth. They have
Elanga as
some
well.
Elunga. They have what's his name? The young midfielder that plays for Spurs as well.
Oh,
Um,
Bergval, I think.
yeah, he's. I mean, I haven't watched him consistently, but I've seen him play against Chelsea, and he's seems pretty solid. Um, Ukraine's not bad. I think they've just got less of a squad that stands out, and they also have the omission of a couple players, like Mihailo Mudryk, who's obviously still suspended, will have to miss out on the tie. Um, Not that, he would have been necessarily the game decider regardless, but I would predict Sweden to win that game, and then I think Poland win against Albania. I agree with you. And you know what, man? Now that I think about it, Poland in general have been solid. I feel like in international tournaments. Like when you were talking, I was thinking back and I was thinking, you know what? I can distinctly remember Poland having games in both 2022 and 2018. I think they're in both tournaments, right? Um,
2022 for sure. 2018, I'm not
2022,
100% sure. I remember in
but I
2022, like I think
I was gonna
Chesney
say I
saved a
remember.
penalty and Messi.
Yeah, I was gonna say I remember that game, the one against Argentina, and then I feel like I remember another notable Poland performance, and then Lewandowski, despite being obviously a lot older now and nearing the end of his career, you can never rule him out and his importance. Yeah, I hate to just concur with you, but I think Poland have a strong squad. They've got some proven players playing in big leagues. I would put them as the favorite in Path B.
I wonder if Chesney's going to play though, because obviously he's been one of the mainstays in that Poland squad, but he lost his place
He's been
in Barcelona
semi-retired,
quite early.
no?
I mean, he's
Well,
still
I
on
think he
Barcelona's
volunteered.
books.
Yeah, but he volunteered to like step down for Barcelona. I remember reading an article. It's a whole thing, dude. To be honest, I mean it's a tangent, but he's living a great life. Apparently, he's volunteered to be the what is it, third choice goalkeeper. He got a reduction in salary, but he's just hanging out in Barcelona. He's like a big presence in the locker room, apparently. He's like yeah, seems like he's got a good setup.
Yeah, so I
I don't
wonder
know
if
if he
he'll still be
starts.
playing for. I mean, I think he's still Poland's best goalie. I mean, I mentioned Fabianski, but to be honest, I think Chesney
He's also
is
very
levels
old though.
above. Yeah,
Fabianski.
exactly.
He's very
So
old.
I would
Most
probably,
yeah.
yeah, he's almost 40, I think, Fabianski. So for
Yeah.
Szczesny, I would assume that he'll still be starting, but maybe there's a young and up and coming Polish goalkeeper that we're not aware of that will take both
It
their
could be.
spots.
So yeah, moving on to path C. I think this path or group, so to speak, is a really curious one. I think some of these teams I don't know as much about. I have to say I haven't seen much of Romania or Kosovo, so I can't speak necessarily to their quality. But the team that stands out to me is Turkey here. Um, I think Turkey have a very good squad. You're talking about a young Arda Güler. You're talking about a young Kenan Yildiz. These types of players. I think you can never underestimate, especially in international football, the sort of breath of life or breath of fire, that a young, dynamic, good player can bring to a nation, or a country like that. So my first thought is, yeah, like I said, I think Turkey's gonna win pretty comfortably against Romania. I could see this being, a 2-0, 3-0 win. And then when it comes to the Slovakia and Kosovo, I genuinely don't know much about the Kosovar team. Um, and for that reason, I lean towards Slovakia just because I feel like they've got a bit more of a proven track record in European qualifiers and generally speaking, in terms of their presence. I can't tell you if it's going to be a close one or not. I feel almost a little undereducated on the topic, but in any case, I honestly think Turkey's going to go through this group. I see them, winning 2-0, 2-1, something like that in the finals.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know a huge amount about Kosovo or Romania either. I mean, I know Romania had a decent World Cup qualifying group before getting to this stage. But the thing is, Turkey, I definitely see as a step above Romania, especially in their own stadium. You know, the Turkish fans are famous for being quite rowdy, so I'm sure that they'll help take the team through to the next round. However, it's I think more interesting in the next round. I feel like Slovakia will beat Kosovo pretty handily. Slovakia at home have actually been quite good over the qualifiers. They were in the small group with Germany, Luxembourg, and I think Northern Ireland. But they came second, and for a while they were even troubling Germany for the top spot. And so I have them going to the final. And honestly, this is going to be maybe a bit of a shock, but in the final, I think I might have Slovakia winning it against Turkey. I mean, Slovakia at home is pretty good. They beat Germany 2-0 at home, albeit it was right after the Euros, and those initial qualifying games can be a bit deceptive. But I would say at home, I think they have a good chance. Obviously, Turkey on paper has the better squad with players like Yildiz and Arda Güler, especially Yildiz, who right now I believe is one of the best young players in Europe, especially for his age group with Juventus. And he's been linked to moves to even bigger clubs in the last couple sessions. But yeah, I think it could go either way. But honestly, I think Slovakia are gonna pull off an upset on their home soil in Bratislava, and that would be quite a big mishap for the Turkish national team because I think they would expect to qualify out of this group, but I feel like that's a possibility. Then Path D, I think, has some really interesting squads in here. So in the first semifinal, we've got the Czech Republic facing Ireland in Prague. And that's interesting because Ireland were on the verge of being knocked out, but then they scored that insane last minute goal. I don't remember against who exactly, but just know it was Troy Parrott in like the 97th minute or something. And Ireland are one of those teams that have a big tradition in football. Like they were consistently making World Cups for a couple decades. They haven't really had the rub of the green recently, forgive the pun there. But I think that a team like Ireland is always a team that you don't want to face in these kind of games. Like they have players that are able to make that step. I mean, they're missing some of their key players. I don't think Evan Ferguson is going to be playing, but he's also been pretty bad and pretty injured while at Roma on loan. They do have Troy Parrott, obviously. I think they have a couple interesting players in defense, and they have Gavin Bazunu in goal. I don't really know if he's playing for them, but I know that he was playing a few years ago. And I think that they have a chance, but I'm not. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to crush the dreams of all of our Irish supporters. I do see the Czech Republic going through in that first game. I think they'll make use of that home court advantage. And the second matchup, we've got Denmark against North Macedonia, going to be played in the Parken Stadium in Copenhagen. For me, that's going to be clearly a Denmark win. I mean, I know that North Macedonia have upset bigger teams before in this format of qualifying, but I think Denmark are going to prove to be too strong, especially in home soil. And then the second game, so the final would be Czech Republic against Denmark, and I have Denmark going through. I know that Denmark have been a bit more disappointing in the last few years compared to how they were in the maybe 2010s and early 2020s. I mean, they were actually my dark horse in 2022 in the World Cup, and they were really disappointing. They actually came bottom of the group with France, Australia, and I don't remember the fourth team, but I think it was like Tunisia or something, but they came bottom of that group, which is quite disappointing. And but I think they'll go to this World Cup. I think they have what it takes. They have the depth, they have the players, and even if it's away from home, I think they're a superior team to Czech Republic, and so I see them going through.
Fair enough. It's yeah, in-depth analysis for sure. I think it was a little bit funny there when you mentioned a team that, was knocked out other bigger teams without making reference to the team that was knocked out, which was Italy, for anyone wondering. It was
Yeah, in
eliminated
case.
by North Macedonia. I remember that game actually because it was an insane goal at the end as well. But on to current topics. For the Czech Republic against Ireland, I'm actually going to disagree with you here. I think Ireland's going to go through purely on the virtue of heart, story, whatever. I think they'll win this game. I think they bring that energy. Troy Parrott, the last minute goal you're talking about, it was against Hungary, if I'm remembering correctly. It was like in the 90 plus, what, four, five, six, something like that. Um, and that was just such a great story, especially for, a relatively small country. I think, playing away in Prague is certainly going to be a challenge, but this Czech Republic team, I don't think is as strong as the one we saw 6 years ago, especially or 5 years ago in the Euros, 2020/2021 Euros, where they were, they kind of overperformed relative to expectations. Um, I think this is a game that's up for grabs, and I think that Ireland can go for it. Gonna endorse them to do so. Maybe it's a bit of a lottery pick or an underdog pick, but I'm gonna hope for them to do so there. On the other side, I'm in complete agreement with you. I think Denmark are going to get through North Macedonia very easily. I don't think that that will present too much of a challenge for them. I mean, Denmark have a good squad, they always have a good squad. They always have a few standout players. You could definitely say they're maybe not as promising as they were. What were you talking about? You're talking about like 10 years ago or so compared to the squad that they might have had then. I think that's certainly fair. They no longer have a informed prime prime Christian Eriksen or Nicholas Bentner, but I still think they'll win that game pretty comfortably. And in terms of them going up against Ireland, I think that's an unfortunate draw for Ireland. I'm gonna lean towards Denmark. I think, yeah, they're gonna round out. And I don't remember where exactly these teams end up in the World Cup groups. If you remember, Pablo, let me know. But
I
it's
think
gonna
no,
be
not
Italy
exactly.
is.
I mean, I just know Italy's group, which if we make it through is quite kind. So I hope we can do that.
Yeah, we talked about that. It was who's in that group for Pathé?
Italy would be with or whoever goes through Path A would be with Switzerland, Canada, and Qatar in the group stage. So
Yeah, that's a nice
not the
group
worst
compared to
group.
some of the other ones.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
for sure. Compared to like the French one, or I think there's another one that's kind of difficult as well. It's I mean the group stage isn't going to mean much because three teams are going to go through in some cases as well.
yeah.
But still, it's it'll be
I
interesting
think
to see.
it's safe to say that a lot of these teams have a very good chance if they make it to the World Cup to regardless of who they are to continue through the group stage, right? Not in an arrogant way. I just think, if you bring in a team like Denmark, Italy, or even a Poland, those are going to be better than
Yeah, then Cape Verde or something.
yeah, yeah, in the nice way possible. I mean, Italy definitely as a squad is better than at least what 60-70% of the teams that are in the tournament, if not more. Like if you just go purely based off names. But yeah.
Yeah, I
Anyways, in
mean,
any
we'll have
case,
to see.
it'll be curious to see. But those are our predictions, guys. Let us know whether you agree, if you think there's anything egregious that we've said with our opinions or anything we're missing out. Uh, Leave a comment if you want to tell us how Kosovo is going to stomp their way through Path C. I'd love to hear it and learn more. But we're going to be doing more and more of these World Cup style videos and topics as the months continue, and especially warming up for the summer. So yeah, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and let us know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, thanks for watching and let us know what you think.